This is your Barbados Today evening news update for Monday, December the 3rd. So glad you could join us. I'm Emmanuel Joseph. Prime Minister Mia Mottley today pressed her fellow Caribbean leaders to bring the region's private sector and the labor movement to the table as CARICOM seeks to push ahead with full implementation of the CARICOM single market and economy. Mottley, who holds lead responsibility for the CSME within the CARICOM, made the comments at a special summit which got underway in Port of Spain today. She says she fully supports recommendations tabled by the CARICOM Review Commission, which call for the involvement of both groups in the process. The Prime Minister says this is the best way to advance meaningful progress on the CSME.
So we're meeting here in Port of Spain to be able to see what are the areas that we can bring definitive progress in on behalf of Caribbean people. Can we allow people to travel easier and at a more affordable cost? Can we allow those people who have to do business across multiple territories to be able to file registration documents in one country and have it mutually recognized elsewhere in the region? Can we begin to think about how we're going to work together to reduce our food import bill? Can we see how we can create opportunities for Caribbean people to be able to invest in renewable energy companies, whether through debt instruments or through participation in shareholding, largely because their savings are only getting them 0.1% or 0.5% in a savings account? There's over $47 billion in savings of Caribbean people within CARICOM. And we need to find financial instruments that make it more attractive for people to be able to invest in, giving them a better rate of return than the savings rate, but making access to money cheaper for those businesses or those governments that need to be able to borrow large and lumpy sums.
Mottley is also optimistic that the CSME talks in Port of Spain will lead to positive results for the region's people.
We need to reset how we do business. And we need to bring the private sector and labor to the table, because it's not governments that grow, it's the businesses and the households that grow. It's the labor that works in the businesses or works for themselves that make a difference to productivity, that makes us competitive. Governments facilitate growth, governments facilitate the environment for competitiveness. So having them at the table as key partners in the building out of the single market and the single economy is the next critical step that this meeting must make if we're to see progress.
In other news, this Monday, 2 of the long-awaited Sanitation Service Authority trucks should be on Barbadian roads this month. Word of this from Environment and National Beautification Minister Trevor Prescott. Minister Prescott told Barbados Today that the trucks were delayed due to circumstances beyond government's control. He explained that Simpson Motors, the company facilitating the importation of the vehicles, had informed his ministry of a tariff dispute between Japan and the United States, which had stalled their arrival to Barbados. According to Minister Prescott, the vehicles are currently in the U.S. and should arrive here before month end. The government of Barbados, meanwhile, is seeking to develop a national register of heritage places. The announcement was made this morning by Minister of Creative Economy, Culture and Sports, John King, at the start of the opening of an OAS workshop on effective heritage registries and national register, which was held at the Radisson Hotel. Now, King disclosed that Barbados signed a memorandum of understanding with the Organization of American States to develop the register, and he is confident that the project has the potential to jumpstart the country as a nation.
Heritage assets are now being preserved and presented as marketable assets and have become an integral part of the heritage tourism sector. In countries across the world, monuments, museums, and specific cultural practices are increasingly recognized as important sources of income and builders of a city's image. Creative cities such as London, Edinburgh, Liverpool, Montreal, and Nassau have used tangible and intangible heritage as markers for creativity and as tools for revitalization.
In sports now, international cricketer Gayle has been awarded $300,000 for being defamed in articles claiming he exposed himself to a female massage therapist. In October last year, a Supreme Court jury found in favor of the former West Indies captain who sued Fairfax Media over articles published in January 2016. The 4 jurors found that Fairfax had not established that Gayle had exposed himself to masseuse Leanne Russell in the team dressing room in Sydney during the 2015 World Cup. They also found Fairfax was motivated by malice.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
Welcome back with news from the region now. CARICOM leaders are worried about ongoing violence in Haiti. Opposition parties have been staging protests demanding the removal of President Jovenel Moïse from office. CARICOM heads now meeting in Trinidad and Tobago are expected to issue a strong statement on the matter. But ahead of the statement, Secretary General of the Regional Bloc, Ambassador Irvin Larocque, says there is an urgent need for dialogue to reach a peaceful resolution. And on the international front, 3 weeks of yellow vest protests have hit the French economy hard, with trade in shops, hotels and restaurants falling significantly. Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire today delivered his grim assessment with no end in sight to the protests. We get more from Reuters television.
Ambulance drivers joined nationwide protests against rising fuel costs and President Macron's economic policies.
We protested in November too against the new law on financing social security. It will completely stop us from working and destroy our companies. We're going to have to fire people.
3 weeks of unrest have hit the French economy hard, with retailers, hotels and restaurants suffering. The protests were initially against Macron's fuel tax hikes, which he says are necessary to combat climate change. But they've highlighted a deep dissatisfaction about his liberal reforms, despite the government insisting they are necessary.
This is how we get prosperity for all French people and get rid of the debt burden. Less public spending, less taxes, and the sooner the better, because we are witnessing with this social and democratic crisis the impatience of millions of French people.
Small retailers have seen a fall in revenue of between 20% and 40% as a result of the unrest, while hotel reservations have fallen by up to 25%. The movement began last month against fuel tax rises, but has since morphed into an anti-Macron uprising.
And that's news and sports, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We are also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as Screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. Now, you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM. I'm Emmanuel Joseph. Have a fantastic evening.